The sun slid low over the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gold. The village at the edge of the great savanna began to quiet, though whispers never ceased. Chickens scratched at the dust, children played their last games before nightfall, and women hurried to finish pounding millet. Yet among all the movements of ordinary life, conversations bent toward one name, carried from doorway to doorway like smoke from a fire. They spoke of the young woman with the hair. She was 19, slender, her features soft yet marked by a sadness too deep for her age. Her hair, however, was the subject of every whisper. Long, black, and heavy, it fell to her waist in thick waves, gleaming as though moonlight clung to every strand. When she walked through the square, people's eyes followed, not in admiration alone but in suspicion, as if what crowned her head carried power beyond understanding. "Have you seen it at night?" old men muttered, crouched near the baobab tree. "The way it shines? No hair shines like that unless the spirits bless it." Others frowned and spat into the dust. Blessing or curse, who can say? Beauty blinds people to truth. Perhaps her mother gave her more than just looks. The girl's mother, long buried, had indeed been a woman admired for her grace. Many believed her spirit lived on in the daughter's hair, a gift from ancestors. But the longer the strands grew, the louder envy took root. And none felt it more bitterly than the girl's stepmother. The stepmother was a woman hardened by years of bitterness, her face set in sharp lines, her eyes always calculating. Where others saw beauty in the girl's locks, she saw threat. Every compliment given to her stepdaughter was a knife in her heart. Every whispered story of moonlit blessings fanned her jealousy until it burned hotter than any cooking fire. At dusk, when the shadows stretched long and the wind carried the cries of night birds, the stepmother would sit at the doorway of their hut and watch the girl comb her hair. The sight filled her with a gnawing resentment. The strands caught even the faintest light, glowing like threads spun from the stars. Children walking by would pause, giggling in awe, and sometimes daring to reach out before running off. "Fools," the stepmother muttered under her breath. "They worship hair, not knowing what danger hides in it." She began whispering seeds of suspicion into the ears of neighbors, feeding them envy disguised as concern. "Hair that grows too fast steals from others," she said. "Hair that shines at night drinks light meant for the crops. Why else do our harvests fail?" Some laughed off her words, but others nodded uneasily. Misfortune had visited the village in recent seasons. Crops ruined by pests, rains coming late, fevers spreading among children. And when people needed someone to blame, they turned their eyes to the one who stood apart. The young woman felt the weight of those stares. She walked through the village with lowered gaze, carrying water pots, sweeping the compound, doing all she was told. Yet no obedience could protect her from the quiet cruelty of whispers behind her back. Wherever she went, voices followed. "Her hair drinks our luck, her hair steals our light." And from the doorway the stepmother watched, her lips curled into a thin smile. In her heart, jealousy grew fat like a serpent. She would not rest until the glow of that hair was gone, even if she had to cut it in the dead of night. Long before the girl's stepmother entered the household, the village had known her mother. A woman of rare beauty not just in face but in spirit. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, gentle with children, kind to neighbors and fierce in her prayers. When storms gathered, she would sing, her voice weaving with the thunder until the winds softened. People remembered her as someone touched by the ancestors, a woman whose presence felt like protection. When she passed away, the village mourned as though a guardian had left them. Yet when they looked upon her daughter, then only a girl of 10, they said, "Her mother lives still. Look at her hair, long black as the raven's wing, glistening even in shadow. The ancestors have left their mark." As the years passed, those words turned to certainty. Her hair grew like a river flowing down her back, each strand thick and full of life. Women envied it, men admired it, and children whispered stories of how it shimmered beneath the moon. Some said it was not hair at all, but threads spun by spirits to guide her path. Others said her late mother's blessings had passed directly into her daughter's crown. It should have been a gift to honor. But blessings often breed jealousy. The stepmother arrived after the girl's father remarried, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She entered the home already wary of the daughter who carried so much beauty. Day by day, as she saw the way villagers looked at the girl's hair, her envy twisted deeper. She told herself, "What good is my labor if they see only her? What power can I hold when her hair gleams brighter than the firelight?" At first, her jealousy took the form of small cruelties. She gave the girl heavier chores, longer hours fetching water, smaller portions of food. She scolded her for combing her hair too often, as if caring for it was a sin. But envy has a way of growing roots, and soon it demanded more than petty punishments. The stepmother began to whisper to others. At the market, while pounding millet, she would lean close and say, "Have you noticed? Her hair grows too fast, faster than nature allows. Such hair must be fed by something unnatural." When a child fell sick, she clucked her tongue and said, "Perhaps her hair takes strength from others. Why else does it shine when all else withers?" At night, she would murmur to the elders, "Look at our harvests. Year after year the crops shrink, the rains come late. And yet her hair grows more and more, as though drinking the very luck of the village." Her words were venom, slow but steady. Each misfortune gave her rumor teeth. When the granaries grew emptier, people nodded. When goats fell ill, they muttered. When storms struck, they remembered her whispers. And so suspicion spread, clinging to the girl like dust that could not be washed away. The girl noticed the shift. Where once neighbors smiled, now they turned their faces. Children who once touched her hair with awe now pulled away as if it might burn. Even her closest friends grew distant, fearful of being linked to her. At her mother's grave, she knelt often, comb in hand, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She whispered prayers into the soil, begging for protection, for clarity, for the strength to endure the shadows forming around her. But each night when she returned home, the stepmother's eyes followed her like a shadow with teeth. And in the corners of the village, voices repeated the same line, the rumor that had become truth in their minds. Her hair drinks the luck of this village. And with every failed harvest, with every misfortune, the stepmother's lie grew heavier, shaping into a weapon she would soon wield openly. The baobab tree stood at the center of the village, its wide roots twisting like the veins of the earth itself. Beneath its shadow, elders gathered as they had for generations, their voices rising and falling with the weight of judgment. The people clustered around, whispering, waiting to see which way the council would turn. At the heart of the debate was not the girl herself, but her hair, long, glistening, and heavy with meaning. One elder, a man with lines carved deep into his face, spoke first. "We must not forget her mother," he said. "She was a woman of light, and the ancestors blessed her. Would they not bless her child as well? This hair is sacred, a gift, not a curse." But another rose quickly, shaking his head. "Sacred? Look at our fields. Look at our goats. Misfortune is everywhere. Blessings do not rot the yam or dry the rivers. If her hair were holy, would our children not thrive? No, it is not sacred, it is a burden we carry." The crowd murmured, divided. Some nodded in agreement, others frowned, unease tugging at their hearts. The stepmother stepped forward then, her face drawn with grief she did not feel, her voice sharp and trembling just enough to seem sincere. "You speak of blessings, but I speak of what I see with my own eyes. Each time her hair grows longer, more of our fortune fades. Her strands glisten while our grain dries to dust. You elders sit and debate, but we live with the weight of this curse each day." She turned slowly, letting her gaze sweep across the villagers, catching their eyes, planting her poison in their minds. "If it were only beauty, I would bow to it. But this is not beauty. It is theft. Her hair drinks what belongs to us all." The girl stood silently at the edge of the circle, head bowed, her braid falling over one shoulder like a river of shadow. She wanted to speak, to cry out that she had stolen nothing, that her hair was only what her mother left her. But the memory of whispers, the sting of cold glances, held her tongue in silence. Another elder spoke, his voice heavy with doubt. "Perhaps it is neither blessing nor curse. Perhaps it is only hair, and we see in it what our fears make us see. But if so, then cutting it should prove the truth." The stepmother seized the moment, her eyes flashing. "Yes, cut it. If it grows again, then we shall know the spirits claim her. If it withers, then the curse will end. But we cannot wait. The spirits will see if we strike in daylight. It must be done at night, when even ancestors sleep, when no eyes watch to shield her." The words carried like sparks in dry grass. The crowd shifted, whispers swelling. Fear is a river that runs faster than reason. To cut her hair in the night seems safer, less likely to draw wrath if they were wrong. The eldest of the council raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. His voice was slow, weighed down by years of judgment. "I do not like this. But fear has filled the village, and fear is heavier than wisdom. Let it be done as the stepmother says. Tonight, her hair will be taken, away from the eyes of spirits." The verdict fell like a stone. The girl lifted her head at last, her eyes wide with disbelief. Around her, villagers avoided her gaze. Only the wind stirred through the branches of the baobab, as if the tree itself shivered at the council's decision. And the stepmother, her face bowed in false sorrow, allowed herself the faintest of smiles, knowing her envy had won its first victory. The night was heavy with silence. No drums beat, no dogs barked. Even the crickets seemed hushed, as though the earth itself held its breath. Inside the hut, the girl lay curled on a reed mat. She could not sleep. Fear pressed against her chest like a stone. She had heard the council's verdict, had seen the hunger in her stepmother's eyes. She whispered a prayer to her mother's spirit, clutching a strand of her hair between her fingers as if it could protect her. The door creaked. A shadow slipped inside, her stepmother. In her hand glimmered a long knife, its edge catching what little moonlight seeped through the cracks in the wall. Her footsteps were slow, deliberate, each one a whisper against the floor. "Do not pretend to sleep," the stepmother hissed. "The spirits cannot hide you now." The girl's eyes welled with tears, but she did not move. She knew resistance would only bring pain. Her breath came in shaky sobs, her body trembling like a trapped bird. The stepmother knelt beside her, seizing the long braid in a fist. With a cruel tug, she pulled the girl's head back. The knife flashed. The girl felt the cold blade scrape her neck as strands of hair fell in thick coils onto the mat. She wept silently. Her tears soaked into the reed mat while each hack of the knife tore away not just her hair but the last piece of her mother's blessing. The sound of it, rough, uneven cuts like rope being torn, filled the hut. The stepmother worked quickly, breathing hard, muttering under her breath. "No more will they say you shine. No more will they see your mother in you. You will be plain nothing." When the last of the long locks were gone, the stepmother gathered them in her hands. The bundle was heavy, glistening dark in the shadows. She rose and moved to the hearth. With a triumphant sneer, she tossed the hair into the fire. The flames roared as though fed more than mere strands. Smoke poured upward, thick and strange. It curled unnaturally, filling the hut with a smell sharp as iron, sweet as flowers, bitter as herbs. The stepmother coughed, covering her mouth, but the smoke clung to her skin. The girl watched through tears, her heart aching. She thought she saw shapes in the smoke, a woman's face, fleeting, sorrowful, then gone. She shivered, though the fire burned hot. The stepmother turned back, satisfied, brushing ash from her hands. "Now you are nothing," she spat. "Sleep if you can. Tomorrow they will see the curse is gone." She left, closing the door with a sharp thud. The girl lay on the mat, her head light and strange without its weight. Her scalp stung, her body shook with sobs she could not hold back. Yet through her grief she smelled something still lingering in the air, not only smoke but something alive, restless. The fire crackled softly. From its embers rose a single curl of smoke, drifting toward her. It swirled around her face like a caress. She closed her eyes and in the silence she thought she heard a faint whisper. "Daughter, they cannot take what is yours." Her sobs slowed. Though shorn and broken, a seed of something stirred within her, grief, yes, but also the shadow of defiance. Dawn broke with a pale glow, the first rays of sunlight pushing their way between the mud huts and acacia trees. The air carried the sharp chill of morning, and already the villagers were stirring, drawn by whispers of what had been done in the night. They gathered in the square, their faces tight with expectation, their voices low and tense. Some came out of curiosity, others from fear. The stepmother stood proudly near the council, arms crossed, lips curved in a cruel smile. Today, she thought, the girl would be stripped of her so-called blessing once and for all. From inside the hut came a shuffle of footsteps. The door creaked open. The girl emerged slowly, her head bowed, her steps hesitant. For a moment, the villagers smirked, eager to see her shorn and humbled. But as she raised her face to the light, gasps tore through the crowd. Her hair, it flowed down in black, shining rivers, not cropped short as expected, but longer than it had ever been. Thick strands cascaded past her shoulders, past her knees, until they brushed against the ground. The morning sun caught it, and the hair shimmered with an otherworldly glow, as though touched by dew and fire at once. The crowd staggered back, eyes wide, mouths open. A woman clutched her chest. A man dropped the gourd he carried, water spilling across the earth. "It cannot be," one elder whispered. "It was cut. I saw the smoke." Another voice rose in trembling awe. The fire did not eat it. The night did not hold it. Children clung to their mother's skirts, peeking out with frightened eyes. Even the animals seemed unsettled. A goat bleated nervously and the dogs whined low in their throats. The girl stood among them, tears still wet on her cheeks, but her face calm, almost serene. She did not speak, yet her silence spoke louder than words. Her hair stirred gently, though no breeze blew, as if alive with its own breath. The stepmother's smile faltered. Her hands twitched against her sides. She pushed forward, trying to drown the murmurs with her own voice. "It is a trick," she shouted. She bewitched herself in the night. "Do not be fooled, this is sorcery." But the people did not echo her fury. Instead, their eyes turned to her with doubt. They remembered how she had urged the council to cut the hair in secret darkness, how eager she had been to see it destroyed. And now, the very thing she had wanted gone had returned with power magnified. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a thin man with ash-gray beard, stepped forward. He lifted a trembling hand toward the girl but stopped before touching her. "Child," he said softly, "what spirit walks with you?" The girl shook her head, unable to answer. Her lips quivered as though she longed to speak, but no words came. Only her hair gleamed in reply, catching the light of the rising sun. A murmur spread through the crowd, rippling like wind through grass. "Blessing, curse, blessing, curse." The stepmother grew pale. She backed away, her voice rising shrill. "She will bring ruin. Can you not see? The ancestors are mocking us. That hair drinks our luck, it steals from our harvests." But even as she spoke, the villagers could not take their eyes off the girl. Some saw beauty, others saw terror, but all knew one thing. What had been burned in fire, what had been stripped by blade, had returned untouchable. The girl lowered her gaze and clutched her arms to her chest. The whispers swelled around her, pressing like waves. Some reached out with cautious reverence as though before a shrine. Others spat in fear, backing away. In the distance, thunder rolled faintly, though the sky was clear. The sound made the people shiver. One elder, his voice breaking with awe, finally declared, "If fire cannot consume it, if the night cannot keep it, then it belongs not to us but to the spirits. We must tread carefully." The villagers nodded, frightened, uncertain. The girl's stepmother clenched her fists until her knuckles whitened, her heart pounding with rage. She saw the balance shifting, slipping from her grasp. Where she had hoped to see shame, there now bloomed wonder and dread. The girl, her hair brushing the ground like a living shadow, turned her back to them. She walked slowly away from the square, each step silent, each strand of her hair trailing like a dark river. The villagers parted for her, none daring to block her path. Behind her, their whispers followed, weaving fear and awe into the morning air. The fire did not eat it. The night did not hold it. She walks with the ancestors now. And though she did not look back, she felt their eyes burning into her as if they too knew this was only the beginning. Fear spread like a fever through the village in the days that followed. What the people had seen that morning could not be forgotten. Hair cut with a blade, burned in fire, yet returned longer than before, shimmering like the surface of a river beneath the moon. It was no ordinary thing, and no ordinary girl could carry it. Some whispered she was touched by the ancestors, chosen as a vessel for blessings. Others spat on the ground when her name was mentioned, muttering that she was a witch who twisted nature itself. The two voices clashed daily in the marketplace, around cooking fires, beneath the baobab tree. But one truth remained in every mouth: her hair was not human. Mothers began pulling their children away when she passed. Men averted their eyes, though curiosity burned in them. Women muttered prayers beneath their breath, hoping to shield themselves from whatever power lingered in her. The girl walked with lowered head, carrying her woven basket, trying to live as she once had. But she felt the weight of their stares, their silence louder than any chant. Children, braver than their parents, trailed after her in secret. They giggled nervously from behind clay walls and trees, daring one another to look closer. One boy swore he saw her hair ripple though there was no wind. A girl gasped that she had seen a strand curl upward like a snake before dropping back to the ground. Another whispered that, at night, her hair glowed faintly, like embers hidden in darkness. The rumors grew wild. They said her hair carried whispers, that if you leaned close enough, you would hear voices speaking from it. They said it drank the dew in the morning, leaving the grass dry where she walked. They said it brushed the ground and left no dust, as though the earth itself honored it. The girl herself did not know what to believe. At night, she sat alone in her hut, brushing her endless locks with slow, trembling strokes. Sometimes the strands coiled around her wrist, holding her as though with gentle fingers. Sometimes she thought she heard a faint hum, almost like a song vibrating through her scalp. It frightened her, but it also comforted her, a reminder that she was not alone. Yet with each day the fear around her thickened. Neighbors stopped greeting her. Some villagers placed charms of bones and herbs on their doorways when she walked past, warding off whatever curse they believed she carried. A woman refused to sell her grain in the market, shouting, "Your hair has eaten my harvest already. Go, witch." The girl fled in tears, clutching her empty basket, her long hair trailing in the dust behind her. She felt the sting of shame, yet also the strange pulse of power that seemed to grow stronger with each insult thrown at her. The council gathered in secret, their voices low but urgent. "We cannot live with such a thing among us," one elder said. "If she is blessed, then let her be sent to the shrine. If she is cursed, then we must cut again deeper this time." But another shook his head, fear plain in his eyes. "We already tried. Fire did not consume it. Darkness did not hold it. If we strike again, we may invite something worse." In the midst of this debate, her stepmother watched with silent fury. Every rumor, every whispered word of awe, cut her deeper than a blade. She had wanted the girl humiliated, broken. Instead, she was rising into something untouchable, feared and respected in equal measure. The stepmother's jealousy curdled into a bitter dread. That night, while the village slept, children crept near the girl's hut again. They pressed their faces to the cracks in the wall, wide-eyed. Inside, she sat before a small oil lamp, her hair spread out across the floor like rivers of shadow. Slowly it shifted, curling and uncurling, moving as though alive. One child stifled a scream, another clapped a hand over her mouth. Their eyes widened as strands lifted, waving gently, almost like they were breathing. "She's not alone," one boy whispered. "Her hair is awake." They ran back to their homes, breathless and pale, swearing never to go near her hut again. But their story spread, whispered from child to parent, from parent to neighbor, until by morning the whole village buzzed with terror. Now, when she walked through the paths, villagers crossed to the other side. When she fetched water from the stream, women abandoned their calabashes and hurried away. Even the elders avoided her gaze, whispering to each other with wrinkled brows. The stepmother, watching from the shadows of her doorway, felt her stomach twist. Fear had begun to shield the girl more powerfully than any blade could harm her. And worse, the fear was spreading beyond her control. The whispers grew heavier with each passing day. Blessed, cursed, witch, chosen. And though the girl never spoke a word, the hair upon her head seemed to answer them all. That night the stepmother could not sleep. Her heart beat too fast, her mind twisted with restless thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the girl's hair, long, flowing, gleaming like water under the moon. It should have been gone, burned to ash in the fire. But it had returned, stronger, untouchable, as though mocking her. When she finally drifted into a shallow, uneasy sleep, she woke with a gasp before dawn. Something soft brushed against her cheek. Her fingers moved, expecting to find a stray blanket, but instead she felt something fine, smooth, strands of hair. She bolted upright. In the dim glow of dying coals, she saw them clearly, long strands of black hair scattered across her sleeping mat, curling and twisting as though they had been placed there deliberately. They did not belong to her. They were hers, the girl's. The stepmother's breath came fast, her chest heaving. She leapt from the mat and shook the hair off, but it clung to her fingers, refusing to let go. Panic overtook her. She grabbed a cooking pot and shoved the strands into it, carrying them outside into the night. She tossed them into the dying embers of her hearth, whispering curses under her breath. The strands hissed as the fire touched them. She leaned closer, satisfied, but then froze. In the glow of the flames, the hair did not curl and vanish like dry grass. Instead, it writhed, twisting and moving, slithering like worms through the ash. The stepmother staggered back, her hands trembling, a scream caught in her throat. "No," she whispered. "No, this cannot be." She grabbed a stick and poked at the strands, but they only moved deeper into the coals, glowing faintly, refusing to die. The air filled with a strange smell, not of burning hair but of damp earth after a storm. It was as if the fire itself could not consume what belonged to the girl. By morning, the pot was filled not with ashes, but with hair, unburned and whole, coiled like a serpent waiting to strike. The stepmother's eyes widened in terror. She stumbled away, clutching her shawl around her shoulders. Her hands shook so badly she could not even fetch water. She felt as though she were being watched, not by eyes, but by strands of hair that moved unseen in the corners of her hut. That night, her dreams twisted into nightmares. She dreamed of the girl standing at the edge of her mat, hair pouring across the floor, filling the hut like flood water. She dreamed of strands wrapping around her neck, pulling tight, while a soft, calm voice whispered, "You cannot cut what the ancestors have woven." She woke drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, only to find strands clinging to her pillow again. By the third night, she was too afraid to sleep. She sat by her fire, clutching a knife, rocking back and forth. But even there, in the glow of flames, she saw it. In the ashes where she had once thrown the girl's locks, The strands moved, alive, curling like snakes beneath the soot. The stepmother's terror grew into madness. She whispered to herself, "It's not natural. It's not human. It should not grow." Her eyes darted around the hut, convinced that at any moment, the hair would rise from the earth to choke her. And yet, in her heart, she realized a deeper truth: the hair had chosen. No matter how she cut, no matter how she burned, it would grow again, against her will, against her hatred. She was no longer the master of the girl. The girl's hair was the master of her. The village slept, but the stepmother lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her hut. Her eyes were hollow, her hands trembling. Every rustle of the wind made her clutch her blanket tighter. She knew now, the girl's hair was not merely hair. It was alive, a thing that had chosen to grow, chosen to defy, chosen to haunt her. That night, the moon hid behind clouds, casting the village into heavy darkness. The air was thick, unmoving. Not even the crickets dared to sing. Somewhere in the distance, a dog whimpered as though sensing what was about to come. Inside the girl's hut, her hair stirred. At first, it was a gentle ripple, as though a breeze had passed through. But there was no breeze. The strands shifted across the floor like snakes, slithering out from where she slept. They crept toward the doorway, sliding over the earth with soundless grace. The girl herself stirred, half awake, but did not rise. Her body remained still, yet her hair continued to move, stretching outward, across the yard, across the dust, toward the stepmother's hut. The stepmother sat upright, clutching her knife. She heard it before she saw it, the faintest whisper, like strands brushing against one another. Then the sound grew closer, filling her ears like a hiss. Her heart pounded as she turned toward the door. The first strand slid beneath the doorway, curling across the floor. She gasped, stumbling backward, her knife clattering from her hands. "No," she whispered. "Not again." The hair coiled, twisting around itself like a rope, moving deliberately. It slithered up the legs of her stool, curled around her calabash, brushed against her arm. She tried to swat it away, but more strands followed, sliding up the walls, down from the roof, surrounding her. And then she heard it, not from the girl's mouth but from the hair itself. A voice, low and echoing, filled the hut. "You cut me." The stepmother froze, her breath caught. "You burned me." The strands tightened around her wrist, biting into her flesh. "You cursed me." The hair brushed across her throat like the edge of a blade. She whimpered, clutching at it, but the more she pulled, the tighter it grew. Her voice rose into a scream, high-pitched and desperate, as the strands coiled around her neck. "Now I cut you." The words were not loud, yet they filled every corner of the hut, echoing inside her skull. She thrashed, falling to her knees, clawing at the living rope that pressed against her skin. Her scream turned to a choking gasp. The villagers woke to the sound of her cries. They rushed into the square, torches in hand, just in time to see her hut shake, shadows writhing within. The girl stood outside her own doorway, her hair trailing into the dirt, her face pale and blank as though she were asleep on her feet. The stepmother's scream cut through the night one final time, then fell silent. When the villagers dared to push open her door, they gasped. She lay collapsed on the floor, hair wound around her throat like a garland. Her eyes bulged with terror, her hands stiff where they had clawed at her neck. And yet, not a single strand remained behind. The hair had already slithered away. All eyes turned toward the girl, who stood barefoot in the dust, her hair long and glistening under the moonlight. Some villagers fell to their knees, whispering prayers. Others backed away in fear. "She carries the judgment," one elder muttered. "The ancestors have chosen her hair as their whip." The girl said nothing. She only lowered her head, her long black hair spilling forward like a veil, hiding her face. The villagers whispered through the night, voices shaking. Some called her blessed. Others called her cursed. But one truth remained unshakable. The stepmother had tried to destroy her, and now the hair had destroyed the stepmother instead. And from that night forward, none dared to look too long at the girl's hair, for fear it might begin to move. The night after the stepmother's death, the village square was silent. No drums, no laughter, not even the usual chatter of children. The air felt heavy, as though the very earth carried the weight of what had happened. The elders gathered beneath the great baobab tree, their faces drawn and pale. Torches burned low around them, shadows flickering across their wrinkled brows. None dared to speak first, for all had heard the screams, and all had seen the lifeless body tangled in strands that vanished before their eyes. Finally, Elder Mbeki broke the silence. "We cannot deny what we have witnessed. The girl's hair has chosen its vengeance. It is no longer hers alone, it belongs to something greater. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Some nodded solemnly, others shook their heads in fear. "She carries ancestral power," another elder whispered, eyes darting toward the girl's hut, where she sat alone, her hair spilling across the floor like black water. "Perhaps her mother's spirit lives in those strands." "No," countered another sharply. "It is a curse. No blessing brings death in the night. No gift strangles a woman in her sleep." The council erupted in argument. Some insisted she was chosen, touched by the ancestors. Others claimed she was a witch, a vessel of punishment sent to torment them all. At last, the oldest among them raised his staff, striking the earth until silence fell again. His voice was steady, but fear lingered in every syllable. "She is untouchable," he declared. "To raise a hand against her is to invite death upon oneself. Did you not see? Even fire and blades could not strip her hair. The spirits themselves guard it." The others bowed their heads reluctantly, some in reverence, others in dread. By morning the verdict spread across the village. People gathered in hushed circles, whispering as the girl walked past. Some knelt as though before a goddess, pressing their foreheads to the dust in respect. Mothers urged their children to keep distance, whispering blessings under their breath. Yet not all bowed. Many fled the square when she appeared, crossing themselves with charms of protection. "She brings misfortune," they hissed. "Her shadow will wither our crops. Her breath will sour our water." Children pointed from behind their mothers' skirts, muttering, "Her hair moves like snakes. Did you see it crawl?" The girl kept her head lowered, saying nothing, though her silence carried more weight than words ever could. Her heart ached for the life she once had, the laughter with friends, the songs with her mother, but she knew that world was gone. The villagers would never look at her as one of their own again. By nightfall, the elders returned to the baobab and carved their decree into wood. She is to be left alone. None may touch her. None may cut her hair again. She walks among us, yet apart from us. So it was that she became both feared and revered, a living boundary between blessing and curse. And though the stepmother's hut was abandoned, whispers spread that strands of hair still slithered in the ashes. No one dared to enter. The villagers learned quickly that her hair could no longer be touched. At first, brave men whispered of testing the elder's decree, hoping to prove she was not untouchable after all. One crept into her hut one night, carrying a sharpened machete. He waited until she slept, the strands pooling around her like a blanket spun from shadows. With trembling hands he raised the blade and brought it down. The sound that followed was not the clean slice of steel through hair, but a shriek, a cry that was neither hers nor human. The machete snapped in two, and the man stumbled backward in terror as the strands rose like 1,000 serpents, swaying in the torchlight. By dawn he was gone from the village and none dared to ask where he had fled. From that night on, no blade could cut her. Men tried knives, razors, even burning torches, but the locks only shimmered and grew, cascading further until they brushed the earth. Every attempt to sever them was answered with growth, the hair thickening, lengthening, spilling like a river that no dam could contain. The villagers began to speak of the hair as if it were alive, a force that was both shield and weapon. When the girl walked through the market square, people moved aside. The strands trailed behind her, whispering against the dust, curling and unfurling with a will of their own. Children stared wide-eyed, whispering to one another that the hair drank light, for in its depths shadows seemed to swim like fish in water. Some began to bow when she passed. "She carries the sacred locks," they said, voices hushed. "The ancestors weave their strength through her strands." Yet others spat on the ground, crossing themselves with charms of bone. "No blessing," they muttered. "Only a curse that will choke us all." The girl herself lived in silence, carrying the weight of both their awe and their fear. She had no wish for power, no hunger to see others tremble. But she could feel it, the pulse that ran through her locks as though each strand carried a breath of its own. When danger neared, the hair swayed without wind, curling protectively around her. When she prayed at her mother's grave, it lay still and quiet, resting like a loyal guardian at her feet. There were nights when she awoke to find her hut alive with motion. The strands moved across the floor, coiling around the walls, reaching out to the door as though listening for footsteps. She would whisper, "Be still," and slowly, reluctantly they would fall into silence again. But one night, a lion came prowling too close to the village. The beast, hungry and desperate, snarled at the huts, its golden eyes glowing in the dark. The villagers cowered, clutching their children, but it was her hair that moved first. The locks surged outward, twisting and rising like a black river turned to flame. They lashed at the beast, coiling around its legs, its throat, its muzzle. The lion thrashed and roared, but the strands held fast until the beast's strength failed. With one final shudder, it collapsed into the dust, strangled by what no blade could sever. The village erupted in screams, some of terror, some of awe. "She is Shield," cried one. "She is death itself," cried another. From that day forward no one doubted. The girl was more than a victim, more than the stepmother's scapegoat. She was a living force, walking with the sacred locks that flowed behind her like a river that could drown or protect depending on its will. The elders etched a new decree into the baobab. Her hair is no longer flesh. It is spirit. To fear it is wisdom. To bow to it is survival. And so she walked, neither welcomed nor rejected, but set apart. The girl whose locks could not be cut, whose hair swayed with unseen strength, whose very presence carried the weight of something more than human. Each dawn as the sun rose, the villagers watched her pass with the river of her hair trailing behind, and none dared to ask where it flowed, or how far its currents reached. Years passed. Seasons folded into each other, and the story of the girl with the hair of blessing became more than memory, it became legend. Children sat wide-eyed at their mother's feet as the fires burned low in the courtyards. Elders leaned close, their voices hushed as if the strands themselves might still be listening. They cut it, one elder would begin, voice cracking like dry wood, but it grew again. They burned it, but the fire only fed its life. In the end, the girl walked with the hair of spirits, and no blade, no flame, no hand of man could tame it. The listeners would shiver, though the night air was warm. Because the story never ended with her life. They buried her as all were buried, deep in the earth beyond the baobab tree, where the wind carried only the songs of crickets. But when the villagers placed soil upon her grave, something stirred. Days later the mound cracked. From beneath the earth, strands of black hair pushed through like vines, glistening under the moonlight. At first people whispered of it in secret. They said her hair grew like roots, threading through the soil, searching. Some claimed the graveyard smelled faintly of smoke, as if the ashes of what had once been burned were returning to life. Soon no one dared to walk past the place at night. Because the hair did not stop. It wound itself around gravestones, curled at the feet of trees, and spread through the earth like veins. Shepherds swore they saw locks of it rising from the soil, swaying though no wind touched them. The elders tried to cut the strands when they appeared above ground, but each time the machetes cracked and broke. They tried fire again, building a pyre over the grave itself. But the flames roared high, then died suddenly, leaving only the strands gleaming longer than before. So they left it. They left her. And in leaving they gave her legend room to grow. Generations passed, yet still the whispers remained. "They say she is not gone," the children whispered to each other. "Her hair still grows beneath us, wrapping through the earth, listening. She waits," another would say. "And when the moon is round and full, she comes near." And indeed, on such nights, villagers swore they saw it, strands drifting in the air like smoke, brushing against windows, slipping through cracks in the walls. The sound was faint but unmistakable, the whisper of hair against wood, against stone, against the skin of those who once mocked her. Some claimed the strands carried voices, soft murmurs, like the rustle of silk, repeating words none could understand. Others said it was her weeping, stretched across time, reaching into their dreams. The stepmother, it was said, never knew peace. Even as she grew old, she would wake in the night gasping, convinced that a lock of black hair curled across her throat, just as it had in life. When she died, her hut was found filled with strands as if they had come to claim her. The girl's story spread beyond her village. Travelers carried it across rivers, through valleys, into distant lands where strangers whispered of a young woman whose hair defied death. Some said she was a saint, chosen by the ancestors to remind people that beauty was not to be feared. Others called her cursed, a warning of envy's poison. But all agreed on one thing: her hair grew forever. Even now, those who pass by the grave swear that the earth stirs when the wind blows. That black strands rise slowly, reaching, listening. That on moonlit nights, if you dare to linger too long, the hair brushes against your ankles like fingers, pulling you gently toward the soil. And so the people remember. They tell her story by firelight, their voices low, their faces pale in the flickering glow. Because they know the truth: hair is memory, hair is blood, hair is spirit. And hers has never stopped growing. Final haunting image: a child wakes in the night, heart pounding, certain she hears it. A soft sound against the hut's window. Whispering. Brushing. A single strand of black hair drifting in the moonlight. Waiting.